Educational Communications and this station present Environmental Directions with Nancy Perlman. On this series, we explore the effects of human influence on the Earth's ecosystems and discuss solutions to environmental problems which affect the quality of life on this planet. Environmental Directions gives you the kind of information you need to help you participate in decisions impacting your community, the nation, and the world. Now, here's your host, Nancy Perlman.
Hello. For the next half hour, we are going to be talking about marine education and conservation, especially through an aquarium, with my guest, Marissa Wu. She is the Senior Program Services Director for the Roundhouse Aquarium Teaching Center located in Manhattan Beach, California. And that is operated by the nonprofit group Oceanographic Teaching Stations. Formerly, she was a museum guide in the aquatic nursery at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium. She is a member of the Western Society of Naturalists and also of the Southern California Academy of Sciences. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You obviously love the biology of marine life. You are working at a rather small aquarium, but it's very important in the South Bay area of Los Angeles. Could you tell us precisely what the Roundhouse Aquarium is? I think it got its name because the building's round?
Yes, that's correct. The Roundhouse Aquarium is a beautiful building located at the end of the Manhattan Beach Pier in the city of Manhattan Beach, California. It was created by the Oceanographic Teaching Stations nonprofit organization back in about 1979 or so. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. So they got that particular building set up and running by 1982. And we've been there for over 40 years now, progressing marine science education. And yes, we are a small aquarium, but we are free to local people who come, and we get more than just local people. We get people from out of state, other parts of California, even out of the country. So we're happy to be there to show people what's in the backyard in the southern Santa Monica Bay.
Aquariums traditionally have exhibits of fish and other marine life. How many species do you maintain there?
We have about 100 species or so that we maintain. We try to exhibit species that are within Southern California area, so anywhere from a strawberry anemone all the way to a California sheephead. And our organisms have a variety of sizes and appetites and diets that they need, so it's quite extraordinary that we're able to showcase this.
With that many different kinds of animals, it must be a real challenge to be sure that you feed them correctly. What do you feed the various animals?
Right. This will depend highly on what type of animal they are. So if they're found in the tide pools, local tide pool areas, we have a variety of animals because they complete an ecosystem. So you'll have the detritivores, like the sea cucumbers. Those are going to come along and digest any of the feces that are left behind by our organisms in the tide pool or any of the other various tanks. We have herbivores, like our snails. We have anywhere from the chestnut cowrie snail all the way to the red abalone. These organisms are going to be eating seaweed or kelp, so our urchins are going to eat that too. And we have 3 varieties of urchins, white, purple, and red, and they're all going to eat various types of seaweed. So we go out and collect that and bring that in-house to feed our organisms weekly. And then you'll have the carnivores, right? So that can vary from bat stars and other types of snails that are carnivorous that will be scavenging different parts of food that we've left for them. So fish and squid, cut up bits like that from previously frozen food. That's what we'll feed them. And then we have other kinds of organisms such as our fish that are in our tanks, such as the California sheephead, and they'll eat anchovies and squid and things of that sort that will feed them. And we try to cut it up into sizes that will be suitable for them to digest. We try not to make it too difficult for them to feed.
Will you advise people how to take care of legal animals that they might want to have, whether or not it's a goldfish in a bowl or other small home aquariums?
We actually get a lot of folks coming in asking for advice on their hobby aquarium that they have at home, whether it's saltwater or freshwater. Yes, so a lot of aquarium enthusiasts, we get them, and we'll try to advise them as best we can to keep their animals healthy and alive and happy and thriving. And we'll let them know if there's a species they really shouldn't have based on the endangered species list and that sort of thing.
What is the easiest animal to have in an aquarium, and what is the hardest one to have, to care for?
That's a very good question. It sort of depends on the aquarium and they're experts in what they can feasibly do, but it's actually quite easy to keep freshwater fish. We do actually have a goldfish and a betta, so we're able to keep those, and that's part of our exhibit that sort of explains how people can take care of a fish from home and how they can enjoy these beautiful creatures from home and study them and look at them, but how to take care of them right so you don't end up with an unfortunate family member that doesn't make it. I would say if you're talking about marine life, a lot of the animals we like to house are tide pool organisms. They're very strong and hardy creatures. They endure these extreme environmental conditions, like sometimes warm temperatures or the lack of water for a couple hours. They run the risk of desiccating or overheating or being preyed upon by predators, and so they're very strong, durable creatures. And we keep them in our tide pool tank, which we do open every other hour for people to touch the animals. Most of them are herbivores, and so we just need to give them some sort of seaweed for them to munch on. They're pretty happy with that. Some of the other organisms will give them a little bit of shrimp and brine and maybe a little bit of fish or squid if they need it, like our anemones. And they're pretty easy to keep alive. However, the other side of that story is the water. And we have circulating water. It's a closed system. It doesn't come directly from the ocean constantly. We pull up what we need to top off our system, but then it's a closed system. So we need to keep that water very clean and monitor the chemicals in the water, like ammonia and nitrates. Those are things that animals can produce when they're in an environment like that. Normally with the ocean, it's so big, matter really, it's able to flush itself out quite effectively. But in a tank, you have to be very careful about that. So we try to simulate their water quality as best we can and adjust it and modify it as we need to. But I would say maybe the most difficult thing to keep in an aquarium is jellyfish. Sea jellies are just amazing creatures. They can regenerate some of their skin tissue, but for the most part, they're very, very fragile organisms. Even a bubble could rip a hole in their tissue. So I would say the hardest creature to keep in an aquarium are sea jellies.
Names of animals are often misleading. The common name doesn't necessarily reflect the animal. Like the sea cucumber is not a plant. Like a cucumber as a vegetable that we eat, it's an animal.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously scientific names are very important.
Absolutely. And we're very careful to list all of the scientific names on each of the animal identification plaques that we have throughout our exhibits. And it's very important to us that people recognize that it's really the unifying language across all of the different countries is this scientific name.
Obviously, most people go to see the animals, but without the marine plants, a lot of those animals don't survive. And Southern California has had an important kelp forest. Of course, it's disappearing, and that's a problem. Can you raise kelp in an aquarium?
Oh, that's a lovely question. It depends on the aquarium and the life support system capacity that they have. So, for example, Aquarium of the Pacific, California Science Center, those are really large aquariums, local aquariums near here, and they have tried to raise seaweed in those certain tanks that they have that can support the giant kelp, the Macrocystis porifera, which is a species of kelp that makes up all of our kelp forests along the eastern Pacific here. Basically, they need nutrients, they need really good quality seawater, and they need cold seawater. Anytime we have a warming of the environment, a warming of the water in the summertime, it can definitely weaken our kelp forests. And then if you follow that up with storms that can happen in the wintertime, some of our kelp forests will get cold a little bit, pruned back, if you will, by those waves and storms that come through and rip the kelp up. Now, Monterey Bay Aquarium has actually successfully raised kelp there, and they currently have real seaweed in some of their exhibits. The Roundhouse Aquarium, we are very tiny. We're not able to raise seaweed like that, but what we can do is house it for a few days at an appropriate temperature, and then in that way we're able to feed it out to our organisms, and we can use it in our programs to show people what seaweed really looks like, how beautiful it is, how important it is to our survival and the survival of these organisms and animals that live in the marine ecosystems, especially the local kelp forest.
You mentioned temperature, and we know with global warming that the ocean waters are getting warmer. Do all of these animals in the aquarium use the same temperature water, or do you have to adjust it depending on whether or not they are from a wetland versus a deeper ocean place?
Yes, absolutely. We do need to modify their temperature. If we have organisms living in kelp forests, they might be at a slightly warmer temperature than those who we're from a deeper water source, such as the wolf eel or the California moray eels. So we keep those at a slightly cooler temperature. And then if we have organisms that are our wetlands, like our eelgrass beds, those are going to be in a slightly warmer temperature as well.
As you say, the aquarium is open to the public, and it's wonderful that it's free to visitors. It is considered a teaching center of a nonprofit organization. Tell us more about the Oceanographic Teaching Stations group.
Absolutely. They are a nonprofit organization, 501c3. They've been running the aquarium for over 40 years now. It was formed by dedicated people who wanted to promote the study of the oceans, the tidelands, and the beaches of Southern California. Basically acquired the right to create the Marine Science Education Center in that round building at the end of the Manhattan Beach Pier. And with the help of local volunteers and some money, they were able to create this building, the Roundhouse Aquarium, and they got it up and running in Los Angeles in about 1982. Ever since then, the aquarium has been serving hundreds of classes per year.
Obviously, the public visits the aquarium. Do scientists come and study the animals there?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. We have on occasion had some grad students who've come in to take a look at the animals. We've also had employees from Department of Fish and Wildlife stop in while they're doing their surveys of fishermen outside, and they'll take a look at some of our creatures. A lot of them, they love seeing the rockfish in person, not at the end of the fishing line. Yeah, we do have a close relationship with a lot of the colleges nearby, so if they need animals or if they want their students to come in and look at specific things, we're always open for them. So we have on occasion had visitors pop in just to see a certain species. It's a lot of fun. And then, of course, we have relationships to trade with the aquariums nearby, so sometimes we'll switch some animals for like a jelly or something like that. So a lot of different aquariums will do that.
In addition to allowing visitors to see the exhibits, what other kinds of programs do you have at the aquarium? And what kind of conservation efforts are you working on?
Thank you very much. Yes, that's a very wonderful question. We have many, many, many programs. We have a library of programs that we offer. Besides just being open to the public from 2 to 5 on weekdays and 10 to 5 on weekends, the reason why we open at 2 is because before that, we are leaving that time open for classes and programs that can come to visit us at the aquarium. And we have a beach component for some of those classes, so they can spend part of their time in the aquarium and part of their time at the beach. It's really important because some of these students have never even been to the beach. Even though it's a few miles from their school, it's difficult sometimes for them to find transportation to these places. So unfortunately, it's like this is their first time coming to the beach, and we really love that we are that opportunity for them. And so we have those types of classes where they come to us. Other times they can't come to us, they can't afford a bus, so we have outreach programs, and we can bring live animals to them and incorporate education about marine life and pollution, impact on the marine ocean, as well as the impact it has on us and our lives. And then we also have virtual programs, so we can do things for libraries, we can do dissections, we can do all sorts of things with our virtual programs. And that really does actually allow us to connect with people from out of the state or out of the country. In addition to maybe a library that's just a bit too far for us to travel to, we can reach them and their patrons through the internet and Zoom. So we have a variety of different things that we can do as this educational entity. We're very proud of that.
One of your partnerships is with the LA STEM Collective. What is that?
Yes, the LA STEM Collective is a wonderful collaboration. A lot of different partnerships. There's STEM organizations, STEAM organizations throughout Southern California that have banded together. It started out of necessity in 2020 with COVID. We wanted to be able to provide STEM programs to students who are lacking them and still lacking them even after COVID. So our specialty is just providing these programs for these students. We work very closely with LAUSD and other school districts to be able to provide these students either after-school programs or during-school programs.
Most zoos and aquariums these days also have conservation programs with other organizations around the world trying to conserve the animals and plants that they have in their facilities. What kind of conservation efforts are you working on in the wild? And is it focused on Southern California because that's the emphasis of your collection?
Yes, we are, like I said, a very small aquarium, so it's very hard for us to do conservation efforts within the aquarium itself. But we make sure that we have messages throughout our aquarium about the different conservation efforts that are going on. We also talk about, for instance, our biodegradable wall as you walk up the flight of stairs to the second floor. That biodegradable wall talks about pollution and the different times it'll take for it to degrade within the ocean. However, there's some that don't even degrade at all, right? So it's a really important message to get across to the people so they can realize what pollution can do to our ocean and how it can negatively affect conservation efforts that are out there and different organizations that are trying to clean up trash and that sort of thing from the ocean. We do participate as well in the California Coastal Cleanup Day every September, and we have hundreds of people come to our aquarium. It's at the base of the pier. It's a designated spot for the coastal cleanup, and they can come and do a massive beach cleanup with hundreds of people participating and making sure to clean up that local beach. In addition to that, we do highlight several species of concern. So we have the red abalone, we have pipefish, and that sort of thing. They're in an environment called an eelgrass bed. So we talk about that and how those particular environments are a little bit more vulnerable because they're right in a buffer zone between where the watershed meets the ocean. It's definitely impacted by pollution and that sort of thing from humans and marine debris. So we do need to take care of those environments. On top of all that, those types of environments are impacted by land development. People want to build buildings and homes on these areas, and of course if they do that, those habitats are no longer going to be there, and it's going to shrink those habitats and negatively affect those species. So we do talk about all of that through our exhibits, even though we're not actively able to engage with other organizations.
I'm fascinated by all that you offer at the Roundhouse Aquarium in Manhattan Beach, and I want to find out more about what's there when we return in a moment with my guest, Marissa Wu.
Environmental Directions with Nancy Perlman continues with further discussion of the world's critical ecological issues. For more information, you may call 310-559-9160 or go to www.ecoprojects.org. Now, here's Nancy.
I'm speaking with Marissa Wu, who is the Senior Program Services Director for the Roundhouse Aquarium Teaching Center, part of the nonprofit organization Oceanographic Teaching Stations. You mentioned that you have over 100 species of animals at the aquarium. How many actual individuals do you have to deal with?
Oh my goodness. In some cases, it's too hard to count. We have hundreds of these organisms that are invertebrates, animals without backbones, anemones, jelly polyps from moon jellies, things of that sort. It would take forever to count all that, but definitely way more than 100. We have a variety of fish. So we've got some rockfish that we house, California sheephead. I believe we have about 5 California moray eels, and we have a wolf eel. We also have 2 Garibaldi, which is the California state marine fish. They're these beautiful, bright, orange, vibrant fish. And when they're juveniles, they have these bright blue spots. We have a variety of different pipefish and dwarf perch and kelpfish. We have some juvenile sharks, too. We have some baby swell sharks that we hatched in-house. And then we have some larger species of sharks, such as the horn shark, the leopard shark, and the swell shark. And then we have, in addition to those jellies I talked about, we also raise brine shrimp. So we're able to raise our own brine shrimp to be able to feed out to these animals, such as the mussels, the anemones, and the jellies, and the pipefish.
There are a number of animal rights groups that want many animals in zoos and even aquariums and other kinds of entertainment facilities that use wild animals to release them to sanctuaries or release them back into the wild. Obviously, animals like dolphins or whales certainly should not be confined to a small tank. How do you respond to the animal rights groups who say these animals should not be in captivity?
Indeed, yes. We do agree that the dolphins, otters, and sea lions of that sort, the whales, they do need that space. Even the whale sharks and the great white sharks, they're all going to need that space. They migrate for miles, and you just can't do that type of behavior in a tank. So we completely understand their concern for that. And from sort of a counter-argument, if you will, is within reason, these species that are able to be in tanks, such as these reef sharks that aren't very big, and some of the kelpfish and kelp forest species that aren't very big. We can house them and we can ensure a good quality of life for them. I would say it's important to be able to show folks what they otherwise would not be able to see. Very few people have the privilege of scuba diving. Very few people have the ability to snorkel or free dive and hold their breath for over 2 minutes to explore this underworld environment. And if we're not able to show average people what is underneath the ocean, it's going to be very hard to then ask them to care about it later and to want to protect it and conserve it and preserve the area. So it's really about helping young children, helping older people develop these connections to the ocean and the animals that live there. And without this, we can't expect them to become stewards of the ocean. And that's what we need, especially moving forward with climate change and needing to protect what we have left. I think it's important. So we refer to them as animal ambassadors. That's our way of giving these animals the respect that they deserve for being on display in our exhibits. In addition to our animals being respected as ambassadors, we also have certain standards that we need to align to. And so a lot of aquariums and zoos out there, not just in California, but throughout the country, are part of the American Zoo Association, AZA. And they have a slew of high standards that all of us need to meet. And a lot of aquariums and zoos will spend years just getting accredited to meet those standards. So they're constantly improving their methods to be able to keep these animals healthy and thriving. And these standards are always changing, always correcting and improving. We're not accredited yet, but we're trying hard to get to that point where we can be.
So why is it important that people care about our oceans and increase our literacy on marine science and conservation and the marine life?
Yes, so important. Let's start with this. For example, the ocean provides us with over about 75 to 80% of the oxygen that we breathe every day comes from the ocean. Many folks probably wouldn't know that unless they saw it in a book somewhere, right? A lot of people assume it's the Amazon rainforest or plants and things on land, but if you look at the surface of the ocean, 75% is covered in water, not land. And so the majority of that oxygen production that allows all life on Earth to exist comes from the phytoplankton and the microalgae organisms that live in the ocean, and the macroalgae, the seaweed, like the macrocystis and the giant perforates and the giant kelp. All of that is creating what we need to breathe, to sustain life on Earth. This floating, amazing blue planet in this vacuum of space. It's just a marvel. It's amazing. And if we destroy this ocean, if we prevent it from doing what it does best, we're not going to be here much longer, right? We really need to protect it. For just that reason alone, I think is a good reason. But there's many other reasons to protect the ocean. For example, the organisms, the biodiversity that live there, they're just extraordinary. We know more, for instance, about the surface of the moon than we do about the sea floor. And so there's much more we can learn from the ocean. That's much more we can do to explore it and to see what's there. Finding new creatures all the time is really exciting and fascinating. And learning from them, learning about the kinds of adaptations that they have to exist in those very extreme environments. Furthermore, we get a lot of our food, our seafood, our nourishment, our protein from the ocean. You can get a lot of good nutrition as well from seaweed and macroalgae and that sort of thing. We really do depend on the ocean. And not to mention, it's a beautiful area to recreate. There's so many different sports you can do in the ocean, ways that you can enjoy the ocean on a boat or at the beach. Honestly, it's very important that we keep it around and try to protect it as best we can.
You received your master's in biology, and I assume focused on marine life, since that's where you've worked as a museum guide at the Cabrillo Marine Aquarium in San Pedro, which is part of the city of Los Angeles. Did they ever say how many species of animals and plants are in our marine environment, in our oceans? I'm sure there's still discoveries being made.
Absolutely. There's definitely still discoveries being made. Well, for example, I believe there's over 500 species of shark in the world, so that's amazing. And I'm sure there's many others that I just don't know the numbers of, but that you got to consider all the invertebrates out there. You know, all the different species of crabs and arthropods of that sort. There's clams and snails, mussels. There's coral species out there, many different varieties of fish species. There's cephalopods and other types of mollusks. Echinoderms. There's so many different echinoderms, which are the spiny-skinned organisms. So that can encompass any kind of sea star, any species of sand dollar, brittle star. It goes on and on and on. So honestly, there's hundreds of thousands of species out there. And like I said, it's such a rich biodiversity. These coral reefs and other types of habitats, such as the eelgrass beds, they do allow for a lot of that biodiversity biodiversity to exist and to continue to evolve.
Did you ever find one species that really intrigued you the most? Did you want to study its life cycle and watch it change, or did you just love all of them?
I think I was loving all of them for a long, long time. It took me a while to figure out between my bachelor degree to my master's degree what type of organism or what type of ecosystem I would want to study and focus on for a master's project. But in the end, I took an internship at Cabrillo to help with the white abalone propagation conservation effort, and we worked a lot with the red abalone, which was a proxy for the white abalone. And I just fell in love with that beautiful snail. It's got a gorgeous shell. The organism itself is quite beautiful, and there's a lot more to it than what meets the eye, and they have a lot of interesting behaviors. There's just a lot to them that we were trying to figure out and suss out so that we could help their numbers to come back in the wild. A lot of those abalone species were serially depleted back in the 1970s and before that with commercial fisheries, so they needed help. And there's a lot of cultures out there that are heavily associated with abalone and a lot of ecosystems that rely on them. I really do admire that species. I think that it may not be as magnanimous as a dolphin or a manta ray or a whale shark, but they're small and mighty. I do love the abalone.
All these animals can truly be amazing when you see them in the wild, and as you say, seeing them in the aquarium gives people an appreciation and understanding if they can't go scuba diving or off into the wild areas. There's so much going on at your aquarium. What is your website? What will they find there? How do they contact you?
So our website is roundhouseaquarium.org. That's roundhouseaquarium.org. And you can also reach us by telephone. It's 310-379-8117. Our website's really the best place to see us, but we also have a handle on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. You can connect with us on those places as well. We're known as at Roundhouse Aquarium on many of those particular platforms.
Will they see some beautiful pictures of some of your animals?
Absolutely. We have a whole webpage devoted to animals and exhibits.
You have many different kinds of ongoing and upcoming conservation initiatives and partnerships at the aquarium. Could you quickly summarize those for us?
We do have quite a few partnerships. One of our favorite ones, we have a partnership with the West Basin Water Recycling Facility in El Segundo. That one's a lot of fun. We get to take on some of their classes, and our instructors go over to their facility and give a tour of the area of the facility, and they do a water filtration experiment, which is really fun. They get to use their minds to figure out how to filter water as best they can in a few minutes, and then they go out into the facility and see how it's done on a large scale for the residents in El Segundo and surrounding cities. And then they come to the aquarium and they see the animals that benefit from this water recycling facility, because that water that otherwise would have gone directly from Hyperion wastewater treatment facility to the ocean now go back into the community. Instead of waiting for the water cycle, to bring the rain, we're actively conserving that water and bringing it back to the community where it can be used. So I absolutely love that relationship with them, and pretty soon we're going to be starting up our classes for STEAM. So that incorporates art into science, and I think those two are just amazing things that should be combined all the time as much as possible. Art is a way for students to express themselves, and being able to express yourself in the field of science is wonderful. A very important tool as well for communication of science. Having those two together in that STEAM program is amazing and very important to us. In addition, we have other relationships as well with other types of aquariums. We have good friendships with them. We do have a very strong relationship with Heal the Bay. So every time that they and the California Coastal Commission organize the California Coastal Cleanup Day, we're right there with them. And we have an Earth Day celebration as well, where we like to invite our partners to come and join us at our aquarium and host this wonderful Earth Day celebration. There's many different collaborations that we do.
Thank you so very much for telling us about this important resource in the Los Angeles area. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you so much for having me, Nancy. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I have been speaking with Marissa Wu, who is the Senior Program Services Director for the Roundhouse Aquarium Teaching Center, operated by the nonprofit Oceanographic Teaching Stations. I'm Nancy Perlman. Thank you very much for joining us, and do tune in again next week.
If you would like free information about these environmental issues, go to www.csufullerton.org www.ecoprojects.org or call 310-559-9160. Environmental Directions with your host, Nancy Perlman, is a community affairs program of the nonprofit organization Educational Communications and this station.